Tate Multimedia's Kao the Kangaroo reboot is a 3D platformer that harkens back to a time that gamers like myself look back to fondly. However, its story is hardly serviceable and the characters are as bland as one could imagine. Its gameplay has its moments and takes inspiration from other successful 3D platformers, but falls short in execution. The visuals are one of the game's strong suits, but that's not saying a lot, and the sound design and voice acting are rife with issues, not to mention the handful of bugs I encountered while playing the game. Let's not beat around the bush and get on with this review of Kao the Kangaroo. Kao's sister Kaya is missing, and it's up to our friendly marsupial pugilist to bring her home, while also uncovering the mysteries of his long-lost father, Kobe, and using his magical boxing gloves to put a stop to the fighting masters who have been possessed by the dark power of the Eternal Warrior that threatens the world and all who inhabit it. While I think that a 3D platformer doesn't need to have an earth-shattering story to be a good game, I found Kao the Kangaroo's story to be wholly uninteresting and its characters to lack personality. Even the attempts at humor felt lame and out of touch. For example, there's an arrow to the knee joke in this game. In 2022, right after Kao's mom gives him a hard time for watching too much TikTok, my eyes were rolling into the back of my head. The story is also incredibly short. I beat it in roughly 6 hours, and that counts the 40 minutes I lost due to the game's autosave function failing, which you have to rely on because there's no manual save option. I'm glad the game didn't overstay its welcome by being any longer, but that's mostly because of how uninterested I was in the story and the characters. Once the plot was established, not much else happens until the end of the game, and even that felt rushed and unsatisfying. I wish I had more to say, but the same could be said about Kao the Kangaroo's story in general. Maybe if the performances of the characters were better, there would be a charm that carried the game, but Kao the Kangaroo's only saving grace is the gameplay, so let's take a look. In contrast to the story, Kao the Kangaroo's core gameplay is competent and at times quite fun. Navigating the environments feels good, and looking for hidden treasures throughout the levels scratches the collectathon itch that 3D platformer fans tend to enjoy. Eternal wells and boss fights provide the most challenge I could find in the game, but even those aren't going to test your capabilities. Combat feels weighty and each punch has impact. While the combat isn't particularly deep, the moves at your disposal allow for creativity in how you attack your foes. You can straight up punch everything that moves, or you can jump and slam down on your enemies, as well as roll into them or jump and whip them with your tail. Doing either of these builds up a meter that when full allows you to unleash a powerful attack that feels surprisingly satisfying. Kao's magical boxing gloves can absorb elemental energy, which enables dynamic traversal of the environments and puzzle solving. Fire can power up moving platforms and furnaces that unlock entrances to new areas. Ice can freeze aqueducts and waterfalls, allowing Kao to move blocks around to activate pressure-sensitive switches and scale cliffsides. And wind allows Kao to tether platforms from a distance to pull them closer. Kao can only carry 3 elemental abilities at a time, and each is single use, but the elemental abilities add a flavor to the game that elevates the traversal in a way I found to be unique to Kao as a 3D platformer. There are 4 total areas in the game, each comprised of a hub space with lots of nooks and crannies to explore. Runes can be found that allow you to unlock entrances to new levels inside the hub spaces. The level design is quite good, and each can last roughly 30 minutes, which was a nice surprise. There are plenty of collectibles to be found in each level, however they're solely completion-based collectibles. Eternal wells provide hidden trials that challenge the player's skills in traversal and combat, similar to the discoverable rifts in Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart or the bonus stages in Crash Bandicoot. Speaking of which, Kao the Kangaroo takes inspiration from other 3D platformers, but these moments fail to elicit a thrill equal to that which they are derived from. For example, Ratchet & Clank's grinding segments have been emulated in Kao the Kangaroo, but the sense of scale from the Ratchet & Clank moments has not been captured here. Similarly, Crash Bandicoot's Indiana Jones-style running from a boulder moments are featured in Kao the Kangaroo as well, but they do not feel as exciting as their inspiration. The boss fights introduce unique combat situations that are interesting and at times somewhat challenging. However, like most of the game, they lack the polish necessary to make them truly compelling. I never expected them to be groundbreaking, but I wish these boss fights could have felt like larger set pieces rather than arena fights with easily readable phases. Maybe if the bosses themselves could have been more intimidating, they'd be more remarkable, but sadly, they're as forgettable as the rest of the characters. I previously mentioned KO's lack of a manual save option, which forced me to rely on the game's autosave function. I found that I could not rely on autosave after I played for almost 2 hours and lost the last 45 minutes of progress. After that, I couldn't trust autosave anymore and beat the remainder of the game in one sitting. Outside of a handful of moments where traversal bugged out on me, I didn't find anything else game-breaking. However, I did notice an objective that still had the placeholder title of Quest Name still in the game, 2 days after launch. Which isn't a terribly big deal, but it's an indicator of the game's lack of polish and slightly underbaked status at the time of release. Overall, Kao the Kangaroo's gameplay is solid, but it's surrounded by lackluster aspects that rob the gameplay of its impact. With that, we can move on to the visuals and performance. One of the more positive aspects of Kao the Kangaroo is its visuals. The art style is a little played out for the genre, but it works and looks nice. The game also runs at 60 frames per second on Xbox and PlayStation consoles. However, the same cannot be said for the Nintendo Switch. The art style reminds me of the Crash Bandicoot and Spyro the Dragon remakes, which I think was the look Tate Multimedia had in mind. By that measure, they succeeded in achieving that aesthetic and deserve their roses. Although, one bummer that I found is that the outfits you can purchase with in-game currency to personalize KO do not carry over into the cutscenes. It's not a huge complaint, but one that I found to be a disappointing oversight. All in all, the game looks good and runs well. I'm not the biggest fan of this aesthetic, but it works, so I can't knock the game for it. I just wish I could say the same for the audio and sound design. Before I trash this game's audio, I do want to be clear. I understand this game was made in the midst of a pandemic by a small team. I would also like to praise its soundtrack, as it's honestly not bad at all. It's actually quite good. However, I found a lot of moments where a song would finish playing and then another wouldn't start until something triggered another track. This resulted in me playing through large sections of a level without music until I entered a different area with a new song associated with it. Conversely, the sound design and combat is quite good. A lot of the impact I spoke about when highlighting the game's combat comes down to the sound design. When using a special attack, the sound winds down and builds tension, accentuating the incoming attack. Most of the attention spent on this game seemingly went into the gameplay, and that is reflected in the audio aspects of combat as well. However, the voice acting in Kao the Kangaroo is terrible. There's just no getting around it. I hate to be negative, but there's no way to say anything good about it without lying, and I'm not about to lie to you. Kao in particular is egregiously bad. I don't know whose choice it was for him to talk the way that he does, but for the main character to have a completely fictional, nonsensical dialect is shocking. It's really bad. As a matter of fact, I'll play a bit of it for you now.
Kaya wanted me to find them. It was her that led me to the gloves.
See what I mean? It's not good. But anyway, with that out of the way, we can move on to my final thoughts and wrap up this review. I really wanted to like Kao the Kangaroo. I grew up playing every 3D platformer I could get my hands on, and I love the genre to this day. When I saw that Kao was being remade, I was really excited. I literally marked my calendar and was monitoring the game with a watchful eye. To finally go hands-on and walk away from it vastly underwhelmed is a disappointment to say the least. The story is hardly a story and feels like it was included just to connect the levels together. The gameplay is fun and the best part of the game, but still leaves a lot to be desired. Even the moments that take inspiration from great 3D platformers fail to live up to their inspirations. The visuals and performance are essentially industry standard at this point, but for a small team to manage that should be acknowledged. Lastly, the voice acting is so distractingly bad that it may be solely responsible for the uninteresting plot and characters. Not to mention the bugs and overall lack of polish Kao the Kangaroo has on display. I honestly couldn't recommend this game to anyone other than fans of 3D platformers. The gameplay is satisfying enough relative to the $30 price tag, but I wouldn't blame anyone for questioning my judgment and maybe even our friendship if I advised them to play this game. I have no choice but to give Kao the Kangaroo a 2.5 out of 5. Despite its competent gameplay, it's below average at best and difficult to recommend even for children. Children deserve better than this. I sincerely hope that Tate Multimedia has the time and resources to continue working on Kao the Kangaroo so some of the issues can be worked out, but in its current state, I cannot recommend that you play it. Have you played Kao the Kangaroo? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Thank you so much for your time and attention, it means the world to me. If you enjoy video game reviews, retrospectives, and other opinion pieces, subscribe to the channel. I also host and produce a weekly Nintendo-centric podcast called Me, Myself, and I that you may want to check out. Additionally, I write for lordsofgaming.net. If you're looking for a gaming website comprised of writers that love video games and just want to talk about them, lordsofgaming.net is the site for you. Again, thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you next time. Lead with love and stay hydrated.